We did that correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's good. Uh, we're now we're now having a follow up about it. Okay, so this originally this should I say this presentation is actually created by one of my students, Miss Nikki Miao. She is actually the one who created the second part of this presentation. So the first, okay, so since we ended in the post impressionism, uh back in 1880 to 1920, this one this one the next thing would be the symbolism. Now, symbolism itself, the symbolism uh, the symbolism art started in 1880 to 1910 CE, which is a both an artistic and a literary movement that suggested ideas through symbols and emphasized the meaning behind the forms, lines, shapes, and colors. So it's basically more of an idea on the idea of a certain symbol. Not just because kanang whenever you heard of the word symbol, 'di ba, ang makita ang first nga ma-thought ninyo is what? Kanang straight kanang mga simplistic na mga art, correct? Simplistic na mga art style or mga road signs. Example lang, road signs. Ang road signs themselves are types of symbols. Sad. Are kanang to give way to pedestrians and drivers to see if now to avoid unsay tawag na, accidents. So that's the idea of the symbol itself. Now, symbolism in art is quite different. The works of some of its proponents exemplify the ending of a tradition of representational art coming from classical times. So basically, it's a different version of neoclassical nga art style, and also it's a and also it's and also neoclassical is unsa man is a reflection of unsa man. Can anyone guess? Neoclassical is a reflection or an inspiration from got its inspiration from anyone? Can anyone guess? No one? Okay. So no one's answering, I'll say it na lang. Now neoclassical is taking inspiration from Renaissance. Symbolism is then got a few inspirations, a few inspirations from neoclassical. So this is basically the quote unquote the remake. This is a quote unquote remake of neoclassical. Symbolism can also be seen as being a forefront of modernism, in that it developed a new and often abstract means to express psychological truth, and the idea that behind the physical world lay a spiritual reality. So, unlike sa previous nga art periods like the New Classical and the Renaissance, this one right here, so symbolism, they wanted to use the religious ideologies behind sa ilang mga subjects itself, behind sa ilang mga art. Yun, symbolists could take the ineffable, such as a dream and visions, and give it form. So basically, it's more of a more siya dreamy ang iyahang, say ito na, dreamy ang iyang dating sa ilang art. It seems something both religious and dreamy at the same time, getting an inspiration from the neoclassical and Renaissance. That's for the symbolism. Now they are the proponent artists Gustav Moreau, Franz von Stock, and Edvard Munch. Munch, and either of those. The first one would be Gustav Moreau. Now, his visionary painting speaks to an obsession with the otherworldly, the macabre, and the life of the imagination, which resonates across recent centuries, making him one of the most fascinating of the 19th century painters for modern audiences. Guided partly by his unusual religious faith, which has been linked to a Neo-Platonist, stressing the imperfection and the impermanence of the physical world. Moreau set about capturing the products of his imagination on canvas while photographic accuracy. So ang kang gusto mo Moreau is more of a ang iyang style of his art is sort of kanang macabre, dark, o otherworldly. At the same time, getting more of a real kanang quote unquote kanang say tawag na, it seems like real life. That's his art itself. His his masterpiece is this one, Orpheus. Now, its ambiguities revolve around those of the female figure, who seems both respectfully mournful and subtle dangerous. As symbolist scholar Rosina Nagitsky states, the gross is the mere head with its chaste hairstyle is contradicted by the sensual, fetishistic appeal that her naked feet offered contemporary male viewers. Now, who among you here have any idea unsa ang word na kuan? Asa to nga word? Chaste. Who among you here has any idea unsa ang word nga chaste? Anyone? Yes, Alexal, go on. What's chaste? Mm-hmm. It's actually close. Now, chaste itself, or chastity, is quite the same, Ramansan. Uh, it's the meaning of it is their sexuality is reserved for a certain person, ra. That's chaste. Now, describe here as the woman having a chaste hairstyle. That hairstyle ang kanang gi-braided ang iyang hair and gi-braided as well as fixed. Gi-kept, gipugong. Now, now, the second one here is kanang gipakita gid mismo ang feet niya. Well, back then, showing of feet is well, it's their quote unquote say tawag na kanang their own sexual thought. If if nowadays nudity is a connection with a sexuality, back then showing women's feet is somewhat connected siya to a sexuality state yun. Okay, now the next sentence, is she a muse or maenad, a holy woman or a femme fatale? That reading is implied especially by the allusion to the story of Salome in the way that she stares directly at the decapitated head. Now, who among you here have understood the meaning of the, or should I say kisay kailan ninyo on the name Salome? Anyone? Anyone? Does any of you know the name Salome? Okay, seems like no one. Now, the name Salome is actually a Judeo-Christian person. She is depending on the story itself. She's either the daughter or the granddaughter of King Herod. She is the one who ordered the execution of Saint John the Baptist. She wanted the head of Saint John the Baptist. Now, the title here is Orpheus, which is different because Orpheus itself is a male in the Greek mythology who went to the underworld just to get the soul of his wife, only to disregard Hades's orders to not stare at her. Now this is quite something because ngano gitawag si Orpheus even though the subject is Salome herself. Okay, so this is Orpheus by Gustave Moreau. Now the next one right here is Edvard Munch. Now his brand of symbolism was less dramatic and glittery, but certainly more anxiety-provoking. Munch's dark fascination with grief, loss, and death started in his early childhood, with his father reading stories by Edgar Allan Poe to him. So basically, Edvard Munch is like the quote unquote the Edgar Allan Poe of the art of a certain art period. Okay, the early deaths of the artist's mother and sister also left a lasting mark on his worldview. His father was a mentally unstable religious fanatic, and Edvard Munch would spend his entire life in fearing of turning into him. Still, Munch admitted that his mental illness, as well as his fear of life, were necessary for him in order to create art. For a while, he even refused medical treatment, afraid that a stable condition would stop him from painting. This is a surprisingly a different uh, artist. Okay, now his work is Separation. Now, the love-torn man about to move forward into the future, but his path is blocked by a crimson plant, possibly intended as a mandrake. With its love and death symbolism, he seems trapped in the present. Moreover, the girl's long hair floats across into his world and caresses his head. Hmm. So it's basically a he can't get over with the death of a woman, with the death of certainly probably his loved one. He can't get over with it, and he can't escape from death itself. So that's the meaning of this painting, Separation. Now, next one right here would be this Fauvism. Okay, I forgot. Now we skipped a certain person that I forgot. Now, Franz von Stuck. Symbolist paintings of the German artist Franz von Stuck can be recognized instantly because of their intense darkness that contrasted with the ornamented gilded frames. There are also his signature evil femme fatale basking in their own monstrosity. Now, this one right here, also in his signature evil femme fatale basking in their own monstrosity. He won majority of his signature art style is ang subject of the painting is a woman having a femme fatale feel to it, as well as basking in her own monstrosity. So basically, she's basking on her own carnal desires. Now, an example of his painting is right here, Salome, as we have mentioned earlier. The image portrays Salome herself, known as the daughter of Herodias and the stepdaughter to King Herod Antipas. In this scene, she dances with grace and allure before an enthralled audience. The painting, sorry, the painting draws inspiration from both Old Testament legend and the New Testament accounts. It alludes to the story of Judith beheading the Holofernes, as well as John the Baptist's fate at Salome's request. So basically, it's a mixture of two different stories of within the biblical text. It also perceives as a how can I say this? It also perceives as a is it more of an interactional painting of what Sodom was. Now, Sodom is actually a city that was turned to salt in the biblical texts. Now gipakita diri is the topless appearance of Salome herself basking in her own monstrous state. She is quote unquote aroused by the idea that sa ito ani that her step grandfather requested answered her request of the head of Saint John the Baptist. Okay. Any questions so far? Clarifications?
Wala na.
Okay. So let's proceed to the next period, Fauvism. Can anyone read Fauvism? Again, can anyone read Fauvism? Okay, go on. Okay, thank you for that. Now, Fauvism itself is started around hold on. Fauvism started around 1905 to 1908. This is actually just a short art period, 3 years. When you say it. This is, if I can recall correctly, this is the shortest period Fauvism. Now, the usage of pure brilliant color aggressively applied straight from the paint tubes to create a sense of an explosion to the canvas. So basically, uh, ang painting itself, ang colors are all over the place, but at the same time, creating object, an object yun mismo. But not too much nga, the paint, the color, ang color itself kay all over the place. No, the colors themselves are directly at a certain part sa canvas. That's Fauvism itself. Now, prominent artists from this one would be Henry Matisse, now widely regarded as the greatest colorist of 20th century. Emerged as a post-impressionist and first achieved prominence as the leader of the French movement Fauvism. As he once controversially wrote, he sought to create an art that would be quote unquote a soothe, calming influence to the mind rather than a good armchair. So basically, he wanted his art itself not to be the one nga kana makita ra nimo sa halls, makita rin niyo sa living rooms, ingana, sa guest room, sa lounge. He wanted the art itself to be somewhat kanang gives off the minds of the people a resting feel. Dili lang kay dili makalabad sa ulo, dili maka oversaturate sa ilang thought. That's for Henry Matisse's work. Okay, so his art is the joy of life. Possibly Matisse's best known Fauvist work was to create in response to the negative critical reactions that followed Matisse's contribution to the 1905 Salon d'Automne. Although the subject of merrymaking figures within a personal setting is a venerable one in Western art, Matisse's daring use of non-natural color to structure this enigmatic world, and his free delineation of its inhabitants, gave a fresh update to its imagery. Matisse's nudes perform activities of sensual bliss, dancing, making music, and embracing. So art, this art itself is, for the lack of better term, is the again the name or the implication itself, the joy of life, creating life, or enjoy, or having an enjoyment a with a person of your with a person of your own love itself. And the second part, that's the depiction of here in the painting. The second of it, which is the colors themselves. Now we all know the what's ito, ano? The grass itself is yellow. Probably probably implication of ano sa tawag ni? Probably implication of either summer or either an incoming autumn. The orange itself, the orange on on the upper right itself, indicating of a turning of the leaves itself. Now, if you notice that the colors themselves are not ano sa tawag na- they're not all over the place. Well, during the pag-create ana, it's all over the place. It just so happens that, or should I say, or a certain skill or a certain technique gibuhat para lang nga ang colors themselves dili mo blot out too much, no? So that's for The Joy of Life by Henry Matisse. Now, can anyone read Maurice de Vlaminck? Okay, can anyone read Maurice de Vlaminck? Anyone? Yes, Egam, go on.
Maurice Maurice de Vlaminck, French folk artist Maurice de Vlaminck seems to have, in a contest with the iconic Cubist, legendary womanizer, and notoriously ego- egotistical Pablo Picasso. What these two rebellious artists did have in common was an uncanny ability to innovate, to create something completely new. For Picasso, it was Cubism. For Vlaminck and his fellow Fabs, Andre Derain and Henri Matisse, it was the bright, expressive colors likened to firecrackers, and outrageously unconventional depictions that earned the group their influential place in history. Vlaminck later railed against developments in modern art, when, ironically, he was one of the true pioneers of modernist abstraction.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, Maurice de Vlaminck is actually the complete opposite of Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso is Cubism. Vlaminck himself is a Fauvism. Quite light ang ilahang approaches itself. Cubism is quite we're going to tackle Cubism differently later on. Fauvism itself is the usage of colors. Is the is on how the colors themselves would both both again spread out but at the same time controlled. Now, his example is right here, the River of Seine at Shaw. Now, the painting was done by Maurice de Vlaminck. During the Vlaminck's time, Chateau was a village at the West Paris, along Seine. It is now a suburb in Paris. In this painting, his approach enhances the emotional power, but does not reflect the color, light, or atmosphere of reality. Similarly to the work of other Fobs, Spivey, although the painting does not capture the reality, Vlaminck paints the reflection of the boat and the ship on the river scene. He also includes some shadows and the uses of various lines and thickness. However, the painting lacks a bit of a compositional creativity. So it's basically a kana sorry, Vlaminck's painting of the river Seine Chateau is at first it's quite kanang okay to a lot of people. However, when you see it clearly, a lot of it kay isara ang stroke. If you're going to look closely sa river, a reflection sa river itself is actually didn't give enough ano sa tawag justice to the objects na naasa surface, like the boats themselves. So that's for the river of Saint de Chateau. So it actually lacks compositional creativity. So it lacks on a certain part mismo. Okay, it lacks creativity, but later on, I'm pretty sure a lot of critics were later on giving this a bit too much hate, a bit too much negativity. So that's for the River of Sin and Chateau. The next one would be Andre the Rain, a major role in the development of two of the most significant artistic movements in early 20th century. His contributions as a generator of the ideas behind these movements are constantly debated, and some consider his works derivative. So a lot of times when his work are a lot are well for the critics, his work would be this one. Uh, the portrait of Henri Matisse. Now, the rain painted the portrait of Matisse during the artist's shared summer in Cologne, when the two men were experimenting side by side in their work. As in most Fauve's portraiture, a detailed likeness of the subject was not the artist's goal. The rain's chief focus was to express the state of mind through the use of visible brushwork and fluid lines, both of which accentuated in his application of pure color. Now, his portrait of Henry Matisse is quite different. Okay, whenever you heard the word portrait, di ba supposed to be ang portrait itself is like your one is to one, your one is to one appearance mo. But this one is not one. This one is different. Uh, Andrew Derain wanted to use the Fauvism art style on for a portrait of Henry Matisse. Makita ninyo closely that there are prominent brushworks. Baga ang brushworks niya. Ang lines themselves mailhan gid nga asa ang baga, asa ang endpoint sa brush, asa ang endpoint ani, unsa ang kuan, how hard how hard the how hard the artist used the brush itself instead of kanang smooth ang iyagi rough hinuon, making the portrait kanang murag unstable tan-awon baga. For the portrait of Henri Matisse by Andre Derain. Okay, so any questions so far, clarifications?
Wala na, sir.
Okay, so we're going to dive in until hold on we're going to dive in until futurism. So next one would be expressionism. Can anyone read expressionism? Anyone? Okay, go on.
Expressionism. Expressionism emerged simultaneously in various cities across Germany as a response to a widespread anxiety about humanity's increasingly discordant relationship with the world and accompanying lost feelings of authenticity and spirituality. Art was now meant to come forth from within the artist, rather than from a depiction of the external visual world, and the standard for assessing the quality of a work of art became the character of the artist's feelings rather than an analysis of the composition.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, expressionism itself is a hold on. Expressionism itself started in 1905 to 1925. Now, kuan ni siya. Unlike the previous na mga kasi tawagan yung mga art periods, this one right here is a bit of a political na. Why man? As what it is said here, it is the widespread anxiety about humanity's increasingly discordant relationship with the world and accompanying the lost feelings of authenticity and spirituality. Na naman, because this was during sa World War One, the First World War. During that war itself, a lot of Not just soldiers, but also civilians passed away during that time. Also, it was one of the, if I can recall correctly, 100 years or so after a before I since a major war broke outside Europe. This one right here is even a more of a major war, okay, because this is actually, well, yes, from the name, World War I. Now, quite differently, Dire. In an historical standpoint, art on this time more of, well, ang artist diri na gyud ang kanang how they wanted the artist's mind would speak, dili lang kay kanang creating an visual world itself from the artist's hand, but this time it's now on the reliance of the mind na unsa ang thought process sa mga artists sa certain topics, sa certain degree, sa certain mga lessons, rather than rather than kanang taking inspiration from their own physical, from their own visualized nga mga thought process nila. Okay. And here we have Edvard Munch himself. He's back. Say hi to him. Now, next one would be Vasily Kandinsky and Oskar Kokoschka. Now, of course, we already know him. He's actually the one, the Edgar Allan Poe of the art itself, and he's actually the one who painted the Scream. Yes, it's him. Okay. So the setting of Scream was suggested to the artist by walking along a road overlooking the city of Oslo. Apparently, upon Munch's arrival at or departure from a mental hospital where his sister, Laura Catherine, has been interned, it is unknown whether the artist observed an actual person in anguish, but it seems unlikely. As Munches later recalled, I was walking down the road with two old friends. When the sun set, suddenly the sky turned red as blood. I stopped and leaned against the fence, shivering with fear. Then I heard the enormous infinite scream of nature. The infinite scream of nature is probably he's referring to either the the blowing of the wind, the chirping of the birds, the flow of the water, and other natural noises. Mo na ang iyang gipasabot sa screen itself. He wanted to create a visual representation of the screams of nature. Thus he created this quote unquote person screaming on the bridge. It's not a person na nagshagi. It's actually Mother Nature, the nature itself. Ah, that's a lot. That's the people's thought process of the scream itself. Dili siya about of a certain person. It's actually about nature. Okay. Okay. A lot of people. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have a ang sitawagan na kanang misinterpretation with the painting of the scream, but this is actually the scream of Mother Nature today. Okay. So we're going to skip Vasily Kalinsky kay taas kay it's kay naay mistake diri sa iyang art. So let's skip to Oskar Kokoschka. Now Kokoschka moved daringly from a more decorative into a bold, racy expressionism. He came from an age during the turn of the century Vienna, exploring Sigmund Freud's analysis of dreams and unconscious, as well as giving the voice of a growing anxiety to felt among the bourgeois class about the modern age. Now, Oscar Kokoschka is actually a, well, he's Naasia during he's from Austria, but he actually have a experience as well on the fall of imperial Russia. Before Russia became the Soviet Union, it was actually an empire, imperialist ang ilahang government. His inspiration is actually from a lot of his inspiration were actually from a experience for the change of the history itself, the rise of Soviet Union. Okay, so his painting is right here, which is the Tempest, or the Bride of the Wind. Now, the painting of the storm of broad, thick brushstrokes on a deep blue background. suggested with a faintest suggestion of a landscape and a moon on the top right of the canvas. Two lovers float in the center of the composition as if in a dream or the artist's imagination. The woman is asleep, and the man, with his eyes wide open, holds her in a tense embrace. In contrast to the woman's serene face, his expression appears pensive and foreboding. So this art itself, this piece itself, is quite different than in Singakay. It a inspiration from Sigmund Freud's sa tawag ni, dream itself, unsa ang how the dreams having a affecting our thought process. Moni ang the tapas. Okay. Any questions so far? Clarifications? Okay. So let's continue to Cubism. Can anyone read Cubism? Yes. Talaw, go on. Go on.
Cubism. Cubists explored open form, bursting figures and objects by letting the space flow through them, blending background into foreground and showing objects from various angles. Some historians have argued that these innovations represent a response to the changing experience of space, movement, and time in the modern world.
Okay.
Prominent artists Pablo Picasso, Georges Marquis, and Fernand Léger.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, Cubism itself is different. Now, this is where this is the feel of Picasso now. Now, blending the background into the foreground and showing the objects from various angles. Some historians have argued that these innovations represent a response to the changing experience of space, movement, and time in the modern world. Because Cubism itself is happening during the 1908 to 1920. Kuan ni siya kana, it coincides with Expressionism. Now, ang Cubism itself is different. Ani. Makita, we already know what's two-dimensional, correct? Kay balo naman ta unsan pasabot sa two-dimensional, no? Anyone? Two dimensions. Hello? Sa Saura akong student here on this class. Where are the others? Hello? Now, okay. Si Sue Bagiora. Anyone else? Wala? It seems that no one else is responding to my question. Shall I end the meet today and proceed directly to our finals next week?
No, sir.
I think I only heard like what, five students ra among 16 Of you here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. No, which, where are the others among it? How many are you supposed to be there?
21, sir.
Okay, so ano man 16 naman hindi rin. I expected you to be present on this meet because of course it's your class Friday ron and so on and so forth. And yes, I'm more of a free type of a instructor, but some of you may have pushed me a bit too far about it. So it depends on you and how you all can participate on this meet. By the way, this PDF file is over 86 slides, just so you know. We'll stop at cubism. Okay. So cubists explored in open form, piercing figures and objects by letting the space flow through them. So basically, two-dimensional SIA, we already know what's a two-dimensional itself. Now, everything is actually in a three-dimensional. Four-dimensional once we are on that object na. Three-dimensional, makita kyud ang upper view, ang top view, side views, and front views. That's for the cubism itself. Now, sa cubism rather, the top view, the bottom view, and the front view, ipakita as much as they can on a two-dimensional na appear na art style. Of course, Picasso himself is a prominent figure of this, the most dominant and influential artist of the first half of the 20th century, associated with most of the pioneering Cubism alongside George Braque. He also invented the collage and made a major contribution to the symbolism and the surrealism. He saw himself above all as painter, yet his sculpture was greatly influential, and he also explored areas as a diverse printmaking and ceramics. As for the Picasso himself, and this is his how can I say this? One of his artwork itself, Guernica. The Spanish painting was Picasso's response to the bombing of the Basque town named Guernica on April 26, 1937, during the Spanish Civil War. Painted in 1 month from May to June 1937, it became a centerpiece of the Spanish pavilion at the Paris World's Fair later that year. Now, makita nato example lang. If you look closely at the upper left of the painting itself, makita nato ang face of a bull or a cow. At first glance, makita nato ang head sa cow. Makita nato ang iyahang forehead, horns, nose, mouth, and eyes. But if you look a bit farther away makita nimo nga ang eyes niya naay kaduhang nga eye, right on the below sa iyang ear. That's the cubism itself. They artists of the cubism movement wanted to make sure nga makita ang every view of a certain object or a certain thing or a certain object or a certain person or a certain place at the same time. Kita niyo nga all over yun ang iyahang artistic style itself. Next one would be George Braque. George Braque was at the forefront of the revolutionary art movement of Cubism. Braque's work throughout his life focused on still life's meaning of viewing objects from various perspectives through color, line, and texture. Okay, so that's George Braque himself. Now, here is the Houses of Estac. Now, he created this during at 1908 during a simple vacation of Estac itself. You can see that you can see that the green itself on the bottom part of the art of the painting kay depiction of the grass itself. The gray on the left side is at the gray on the left side is actually a tree, and there's a house at the background. which is surprisingly a bit weird. Quote unquote. Did he say weird? But that's how the art. That's how the artist's depiction of using a cubism yun. Nga, it's supposed to be nga flat ground siya ba? The ground is flat for it. Pero sa tawag na gislanted ni George's Brack ang land ang kanang sa tawag na surface, ang land surface itself, including the tree para lang nga makita ang house mismo. And also the house itself is say tawag na, nearly little to no effort. Just saying lang, it's like a little quote little to no effort of depicting of a house itself. Walay windows, it's just walay windows, walay doors, walay design. It's just a depiction of a what? Of a pyramid style sa roof, of a pyramid triangle sa roof, and a box, a rectangular box pa sa background. So that's for the houses of a stack. And the last artist here would be Fernand Laguerre. A reputation as a cubist, his style varied considerably from decade to decade, fluctuating between figuration and abstraction, showing influence from a wide range of sources. Now, the city is all over the place. Wala kay ma-make out the but but the more you stare at it, the more nga multiple things na makita ninyo. On the upper left makita ang steel cable, ang steel frames, probably depicting of a steel frame part sa Eiffel Tower. The purple object on the right side is probably a depiction of a electrical post. On the left side of it is actually probably a depiction of a pedestrian lane. It's either pedestrian lane was invented during 1919 or probably not, but makita mismo on how it kind of appears like one ba. And then there's a depiction of multiple people itself and walking to it. So this is a sa tawag ni depiction of a kuan kanang evolving city. This is a depiction of an evolving city. Okay. So any questions so far? Clarifications?
None, sir.
Okay. So so let's stop right here on cubism itself. The next one would be futurism, abstract art, data art, surrealism, art deco, pop art, photorealism, and conceptual art and installation art. So we're still farther away. There are multiple art movements during the history of this world itself. It's not just about Renaissance period. It's not just about ancient art period. Hell, we even skip prehistoric art. We skip prehistoric art. So there are over 22 recorded art movements. 23 if including a prehistoric art itself. Okay? So that's it for now. Stop presenting sa. Okay. So for your performance task it kay kay the other class, the other art appreciation under my class, gitaganan ako sila og starting nga action. Okay. So your performance task is this: go to a museum and take a shot, or should I say photograph a painting of your own liking. This is just the first step lang sa. Photograph a painting of your own liking. I-picture ninyo ang isa ka painting nga nagustuhan gyud ninyo. But dili pa na siya i-pass. That's just the first step of the performance task. Alright? Isa ra ka painting. Isa ra ka painting ang inyong pilion. Okay? So any questions so far? Clarifications, violent reactions?
Wala rin. Wala rin, sir.
Okay, that's good. That's great. Kindly open your